Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well and staying warm. Did you know that the month of February is Black History Month here in the United States? That means that all throughout the month, all around the country, people are learning about and celebrating the history of African Americans in our country. Black History Month is celebrated in a variety of ways at Church of the Resurrection, where I am the priest. We usually have guest speakers and special music, and we have a huge feast called Soul Food Sunday, the last Sunday of the month. One person whose life we remember and celebrate this month in the Episcopal Church is a man named Absalom Jones. And Absalom was born a long time ago, in 1746, before the United States was even a nation yet. And because he was a black man, born at a time when most black people in the British colonies were slaves, he was also a slave. When he was very young, he taught himself how to read using a Bible, because slaves weren't allowed to go to school. When Absalom grew up, he got married to a woman who was also a slave, but eventually they were able to buy their freedom, so they didn't have to be slaves anymore. And once they were free, Absalom and his wife moved to the city of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Eventually, Absalom Jones and his friend Richard Allen started an organization that was called the Free Society of Philadelphia to help the African American community, to raise money to help other slaves purchase their freedom and to speak out against slavery. And eventually they started their own church, and they asked Absalom Jones to be their leader. He accepted their call to serve at the newly formed St. Thomas African Episcopal Church. Eventually, Absalom Jones was ordained, became an Episcopal priest like me, and he was the very first African American to become an Episcopal priest. For more than 20 years, the Reverend Absalom Jones faithfully served the people of St. Thomas's Church. And this year, St. Thomas's Church, the church that he helped start, is celebrating their 227th anniversary. But Absalom Jones wasn't just a priest, he was also a leader in the city of Philadelphia. One year when there was an illness called yellow fever in the city that was making everyone sick, and many of the people who could afford it had left the city, Absalom Jones got many of the black citizens of Philadelphia to stay and help those who were sick. Even though Absalom Jones and his fellow African Americans at St. Thomas Church were treated badly by many of the white people in Philadelphia, they were determined to live out Jesus' command to love one another, even when they didn't feel loved in return. That doesn't mean that they weren't angry about slavery and the racism that they had to experience. They worked very hard to try to convince people that slavery was bad, and that it was wrong, and that it should be illegal. Absalom Jones and his friends believed in Jesus' command to love one another, and to love even your enemies, and to pray for those who persecute you, who are mean to you. So every year on February 13th, we remember and celebrate the Reverend Absalom Jones, a former slave, the first African American priest in the Episcopal Church, and a good man who tried his very best to love everyone. During this Black History Month, I wonder, are there any African Americans in our country's history that you'd like to learn more about? Someone in a part of the country like Philadelphia or New York, or even right here in Omaha. I hope that there are, and I hope that you do. I hope that you all have a great week. I will be back next week with another chapel message. Until then, stay warm, stay safe, and God bless.